Epic Bill, good evening, sir. Thank you so much for joining me on the podcast tonight, and welcome to the All Around Adventure podcast.
Good evening, Josh. All Around Adventure podcast power. I've been dying to say that. Woo, woo.
Yes, well, I've certainly been looking forward to this conversation, sir. We've just connected very recently, but I was immediately fascinated when I heard about your background. You know, you are a man who has done a lot, accomplished a lot, attempted a lot of things, been all over the world. And to kind of set the framework for our conversation, I wanted to start off with a quote that I think is pretty fitting for what we're going to be talking about today. And we talked about this a little bit just before we hit record here, and that is the Man in the Arena speech from the great President Theodore Roosevelt. So if you'll indulge me, sir, we'll open up with this. It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong person stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred with dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again, because there is no effort without error and shortcoming, but who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at the best knows in the end of triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat.
Wow. That one almost makes me tear up every freaking time I hear it, man. It chokes me up, man.
Well, yeah. Well, it's very fitting to like much of what's happened throughout your life, sir. You know, you're someone who's dared very greatly at several things, both as an entrepreneur and then, of course, as an ultra endurance athlete as well. And we're certainly going to get into those. But what I really like to do with all my guests is just start from the beginning. So let's go back in time a little bit here, just because, you know, you mentioned also that your father was a proud military man, a fellow Marine. Hoorah. Hell yeah.
I knew you would like that. Woo!
Yes. And then so can you kind of tell us a little bit about that? And then ultimately, I think he was pretty influential into you starting Bradley Video. So take us back here a little bit. Fill us in on that.
Yeah, my dad went in the Marines at like 17 years old. And it made him like really, really tough. And he would let me know in high school, hey, when I was your age, I was in the Marines. You know what I mean? Like, you know, there was no screwing around. It's get to work or whatever I was doing, you know. So, but he really, really influenced me both on just being tough in life, man. It's like, you just keep standing up and keep going forward. You dust your butt off like the man in the arena, man. You get knocked down, you stand back up and you keep going towards that goal. Because if you sit down and you stay down after you get knocked down, you ain't going anywheres towards that goal or in life. You're just going to be stuck right there. And yeah, those are the people who have that, you know, they get that beaten look like their dream was beat out of them. And they just look sad looking for the rest of their life. That's what I think anyway. But yeah, so, and then, yeah, and he at 40 years old, he started his own business with like $5,000 in the bank and 4 kids, you know what I mean? All of us were really young, and he was just, you know what I mean? He just knew he wouldn't fail. So he started his own business. And that really did give me the courage of, you know, I did run track in high school and cross country. So I did get started on those things there, but I was always intrigued by business. So when I got out of high school, I went, you know, maybe because of my dad, you know, and he was very successful in his business. And I went right after, like I saw when the video stores come out, like we were just talking about. In my head, I brainwashed myself that I'm 30, but I don't know what we say, but I did my first video store when I was, 23 years old. And I walked in banks like normal people would to borrow money. And they pretty much were laughing at me, you know, like, you know, I remember the third bank I walked in, the guy I was supposed to meet with wasn't even there. He had like gone to lunch or something. And I'm like, dude, you don't understand. I'm getting a loan. And so anyway, I already had a house at that time. I'd borrowed half the money. It was going to cost 50,000 to open the store. So I borrowed half the money from the house. It was the second half that I needed a loan for. And anyway, the bottom line is, you keep sending that energy out. If you have passion, I'm telling you, people step up and give you advice or help you or whatever. Because at the time, my ex-wife was working with somebody at work, and she was telling him we're having trouble getting financing. And she said, well, he should talk to my husband, Kenny. Kenny was like a loan officer in a car place, and they were known for getting creative loans. And so I walked in with Kenny, and I talked to him about it, and he said, here's what you do, Bill. You go to downtown San Francisco, you walk in every bank, and you get a credit card application. You fill them all out, and then you mail them all in at one time. I got 15 credit cards back. I only had one when we started. We charged the second half of the store. I mean, it's always like, if there's a will, the universe will make it happen. You're going to make it. You're just not, people sense when you're the type who doesn't quit. And I don't quit, man. I know you're the same type. Woo, woo. So yeah, that was how I got started in the business. Yeah.
So what did the conversation look like with family and friends when you told them that you had this idea and that you wanted to capitalize on it and actually open up Bradley Video? Because you did bring up this point that trying to get the loan from the bank, you were kind of sort of met with like a little bit of, I guess I'll say, for lack of better terms, criticism, if you will. And so what was it like bringing this idea forth to loved ones, especially doing something as audacious as, like you said, mailing out multiple credit card applications all at once?
I didn't tell anybody. I just did it. You know what I mean? I don't want to hear anything negative. I didn't want to, I just didn't want to, So, I mean, it's a ballsy thing. People don't do stuff like that, and really didn't do it back then. You can't even do it now. I think the credit checks are so crazy. You ain't going to get away with nothing. But yeah, I just did it. I mean, I brought my dad down and showed him when the bill, like a week before it opened up. I mean, you know what I mean? So it was like, I said, and then my dad was proud, but I did everything myself. I didn't need any help from anybody. I just believe I attack my goals, and I'm, I just kind of go at things, I don't know, you know what I mean? Like, you got to do it. And then if people come in and jump in and help, it's great. But otherwise you're going to keep going until another, person comes along to maybe give you some advice or some help,
Absolutely. So, as I also mentioned to you before we hit record here, going to the video rental store was kind of sort of my pastime. Like, I was born in '85, so growing up in the late '80s and throughout the '90s, that was something that my family and I always love doing. Like on a Friday night or on a weekend night, is going to the video store. And of course, now where I'm from in Michigan, we're from a very rural part of Michigan, a very big farm community. So we had a couple of nearby gas stations that made pizza, and they had like a small room off to the side where we could rent videos. But that was always very much like something that I enjoyed doing with my family. We'd maybe get like 2 movies. They were on VHS tapes. We would get a bag of chips, a 2-liter of pop, and then maybe we'll order a pizza too if we hadn't had dinner together. And then we would just watch movies. So I guess I'm also kind of curious about around what year did you open up the store, and what were some of the earlier titles that you remember stocking on the shelves?
We opened in '84. So you were like -1. We opened in '84, and yeah, what titles do I remember? We used to always only buy like 1 to 3 titles. I remember that, of the movies. And yeah, some of those early movies, they were, mid '80s movies, Pretty in Pink. I remember that was pretty early on. Maybe Rambo. Does that sound right?
I think so. Yeah. Rambo. First Blood, I think, was '83, if I'm recalling.
Maybe
also,
that was something early.
Terminator was probably around
we
there
love
too.
Terminator, man. Arnold was the king, man. Yeah, that was one I think we brought 10 copies of, but it was, we were very aggressive. We were really successful in video. So we started out with that one store. By the end, we had 13 stores, and we were averaging almost $1 million a store. They were all
Wow.
big. That first one was only like 800 feet, but we moved. We from there we moved all big stores. We were competing head to head with Blockbuster and Hollywood. Our volume was one of the tops for independents in the country, just really high.
Amazing. Wow. So, and also your video store was actually featured in the movie Scream. Now, I remembered in the documentary that I watched about you recently. Is this because I do remember that scene from the movie Scream, because that film came out in '96, and but that was your store in the movie.
Yeah, when we were killing it then, like really killing it, and they came to us. They go, "Hey, they want to film a horror movie in your store," and I'm going like, "Oh, okay." I was like skeptical because all the horror movies before that were like these super B horror, cheap production horror movies. And I think he kind of started that off, Wes Craven with Scream. And then it seemed like the horror movie, that whole genre just took off after that, and it was more of a humorous one, but it was great. I loved it. Some of, my employees got in it. They loved it. It was a big kudo. They, in fact, is even right now, if you can find, they're selling the Bradley Video shirts online, for Scream, because that was our shirts, and you can find them online with, our Bradley Video name, and you could pretend that you worked at Bradley Video.
All right. Well, of course, sadly, unfortunately, Bradley Video is no more. So can you kind of tell us about what happened there? And then, of course, as we've been discussing earlier on, despite like things that may go awry throughout life, we always try to, dust ourselves off, and we try to keep going again. So can you kind of fill us in on what happened there and kind of where you went moving forward from there?
Yeah, I think what I did was the bankruptcy. Yeah, it's still hard for me, man. We were so successful, and it went downhill so fast within a few years. I was actually expanding and had 3 new stores open. We were really rolling, like really making a lot of money. And then when Netflix got in the game and got out there really wide, I mean, it was a great deal. You know what I mean? It was like they had a better mousetrap, and we went down so fast, so much. I ended up, when I ended up filing for bankruptcy, my my second wife left the same week. And my dad, the Marine, would call me every night, and he would, just talk to me for a little bit. And I asked him later, I go, "Dad, you're not the type to call every night and check." And he says, "I know, Bill. You know why I called every night? I was doing a suicide check to make sure you're still alive." I go, "Thanks, Dad." But he said, "You were really, really depressed, And I went back to work for the family business, and my sister had bought my dad out, and my brother had. And because that's how I kind of started out in the trades as an electrician in San Francisco. And I went back doing, at the end of that, because I was kind of overlapping with the video, I was doing sales, because I can talk a little bit. But anyway, so when I remember I was walking down the street and in the financial district of San Francisco, and I could only look down at my feet. I was broken. You know what I mean? I was broken. I'd be looking at my feet, and it was like, man, I need to get my confidence back. How am I going to get my confidence back? I ain't going anywhere like this. And so I'd been doing, for the last 10 years before that, I'd been doing triathlons, and marathons. And yeah, I know you're a marathoner, so we have that in common too. Woo!
We do.
Marathon power. And but I'd been doing those. And my buddy came up to me, and this is after I'm back working for about 3 months. And my training is down to, maybe just 2 or 3 runs a week, maybe 3, but not far, not just easy. And he says, you've been talking about it, doing a 50-mile run for a long time. You know what? The perfect one would be tomorrow. He goes, but I know it's tomorrow. And I'm like, yeah, that's not a lot of notice. And believe it or not, at that same time, I had gotten poison oak on my manly parts. So I was like, they were a mess. They were all red. Oh yeah, man, it was just a mess down there. And I said, and then I'm going, maybe I can't do this or whatever, but I remember I went to a friend of mine's for dinner, and I said, that night, this all happened like in this 24-hour period, and I said, I'm thinking about I'm thinking about this 50-miler tomorrow, but it's tomorrow. But so I don't know if I'm really ready. I haven't been doing a lot of, training or anything, but I'd been doing a lot before I went bankrupt, a lot of triathlon training and Ironman training. And he said, and I also got poison oak on my manly part. He said, well, why don't we call my dad and see what he thinks? And so his dad was a retired, like 80-year-old doctor, right? And he gets his dad on the phone. Dad, Bill wants to know if he could do a triathlon. I mean, not a triathlon, a 50-mile run with poison oak on his manly parts. And his dad goes, let me think about that. Bill, probably not a good idea, Bill. Probably not a good idea. And so then I go to bed, right? And I'm going like, oh, I'm not going to do it. And then I wake up at like 3 a.m, and literally it was like Tom Cruise in Risky Business. Sometimes you got to say what the bleep. I was just so desperate to feel better. You know what I mean? I was just so desperate. And this gets me emotional, but I went down there and I ran that 50 miles like my life depended on it. And I remember when I finished, the guy goes, what's all that red stuff between your legs? The poison oak had gone down my thighs, But I tell you, I ran that 50 miles like my life depended on it, because it did. And the next week when I went into San Francisco and I'm walking down the financial district, I'm standing taller. I had a win. I had a win. It was a big deal, man. Yeah, and then I just started rolling from there. I go, if 50 feels this good, what would 100 feel like? Then what would 100 in Alaska feel like? And 135 in Death Valley. I mean, I was just rolling, man. And I was feeling better all the time.
Amazing. Well, you just made me think of something when you brought up your father that would check in on you. No, actually, that's a pretty regular practice for Marines and other veterans alike. Is that we call them buddy checks, and just every now and then, I think about my fellow Marines. Even some that I've connected just through doing with this podcast that I haven't actually met in person or I didn't serve alongside. But we still share that brotherhood, that camaraderie. Where I'll just drop a text, just say, "Hey, man, buddy check, really quick." Just how you doing? How's everything going? Because sometimes that's just the thing. We may or may not know what battles some people are trying to fight on their own. What demons are clawing at their back that they're dealing with, and they think they have to do it all alone, right? And it sounds like throughout your life you've had that just as well. Not only with your father checking in on you, but as you've went about this whole journey of doing all these ultra endurance events, you had some great mentors and coaches and support crews that helped you along the way as well.
Yeah, for sure, man. Thank you for your service, by the way. And
my honor, sir.
My dad, that was a big deal to me that he was checking in on me at that time, because that was as low as probably I've ever been, in my life, or pretty damn close to it. I've had some good low points, but that was right there, So with my wife leaving at the same time and losing this business that was my identity that I'd been running for 20 years, it was a long time. And it was definitely in my ingrained as my identity, And so, yeah, that meant a lot that he checked on me. And I think that's great that buddy check is great. I think it's definitely necessary. It really helps, if you know somebody who's going through something, just that somebody cares, enough to check on you.
Well, and then it's also what you mentioned that it was a physical activity. I mean, a very long and arduous physical endeavor that you undertook that kind of gave you that win and kind of gave you like a stepping stone to keep moving forward with. And, I hear that a lot in the veteran community where if some veterans, when they tell the stories when they're doing buddy checks on like some of their boys, and if they say that they're going through a dark time, one of the questions they'll ask is, well, when was the last time you were in the gym? When
Exactly.
like
I like that.
when was the last time you went out for a run? When was the last time you got off the couch, got out of your house, got outside, or went to somewhere where you can actually push yourself and get your body moving in that way? Because it's just there's that saying that I love is that with a strong body comes a strong mind, and so and of course there's different avenues that you could take. I mean, you went for ultra endurance. Some people want to go into the weight rooms and just toss weight around. Some people will get on the martial arts mats and roll around with guys doing jujitsu or stand up striking and sparring. But it's just that's something I always try to encourage people to do. It's like if you're like in a dark place and you're not sure what to do, go do something physical. I don't care what it is. Just get your body moving.
You always feel better after that, man. Always. My ex-wife would tell me when it was hot and I mean it was heavy for a while before you finally filed. I mean you're just you knew because the stores were in trouble. I don't have to be a genius to figure it out. Everybody was rushing over to Netflix, and she would go, how can you go out for a 2-hour run with all this bankruptcy stuff right on the verge? And I would say, how could I not? It's the only way I can think. After I get out there for an hour and I get the endorphins going, then I could think straight. You know what I mean? But it took about an hour to work the demons out, and then I could think straight, and I would come up what my next strategy would be. There wasn't a lot of strategy to survive, but whatever, just to make the bankruptcy less painful, I guess.
So you kind of your journey, well, even though you said you were doing a lot of training, this 50 miler sort of kind of set like a good tone for you. And, this led into a much longer journey where you were just chasing ultra endurance event. And then of course you were doing some mountaineering and everything like that. So what was like the next event after that? Like what did you get on the calendar following this 50 miler to keep that trend going again?
It's funny when you start doing the ultras, you meet people and they all got, what would be next? What have they done? What's this? And yeah. And I know like when I heard about this, what did I do? I tried to I did a 100-miler next in the Bay Area, right? Yeah. No, I tried to do Western states. I got to know it was easier to get into Western states back then. But I made it 60 miles, and it was one of those hot years, and I didn't know anything about anything. And so they said, you need to drink, make sure you drink. I don't think they knew about hyponatremia, or not very many people did. And so you tell me to drink. I'm like, I had a Camelback, like, and then I got to like 63 miles and I was just so weak. I couldn't go on from there. I was just ready to, I mean, I was like, literally like, I mean, if anybody's had hyponatremia, man, you are so weak. It's unbelievable. I couldn't even stagger anything. But then I went down. I was upset that I didn't make it, learned a little more. And I went down near where I live in Marin, and I did the Headlands 100, which had more climbing than Western states at the time. And and I finished that. It was like a 32-hour cutoff, and I finished it in like 30 hours. And so then I'm
Nice.
like, my confidence is going, oh. And then I'm like, man, if I could do 100 here. And then they're like, oh yeah, there's this race in Alaska. It's called the Susitna 100. I go, man, if I could do it here, I wonder if I could do it in the snow. And so I went up there, and it took me to everything. I never do hardly anything on my first shot, but I went up there the first year, and we got hit with a blizzard. And it was crazy. And I got hypothermic out there and had to be snowmobiled back in. I made it to like 70 something miles. And and then, I did come back the next year and I finished, but there's always a catch when I finish, right? I finished 6 hours after the cutoff. It was like I came into the last checkpoint. It was like 85 miles, I think. And they said, I said, I was giving everything I had, and I'd gone all the way through the night. And I'm like, and it was snowing. I mean, it was really hard conditions. I mean, we were in powder, man. It was really hard. And I'm coming in, I'm fighting with everything I got. I'm just chugging these Red Bulls. I was chugging them, and I get into the thing with 2 minutes to spare. Right, I go, all right, I'm in 2 minutes to spare. I need to take a nap and get my shit together. And the guy goes, well, you don't understand. That cutoff is for leaving, not for coming. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. And so I go, well, just let me close my eyes for a second so I could get the nods out. Like, have you ever done that where you roll your eyes back? And so I go lay down and I get like a couple minutes, and then I stand up and I start going for the door, and all that Red Bull starts to come up, man, because I'd really been chugging it to make it to this checkpoint. And I get to the door and I throw everything up going out the door and on the guy's porch. I remember it was so cold that his wife was behind me, like sweeping my puke off, and it was already frozen.
That is cold.
I know. And so I'm, but I knew I couldn't go on like that. So I went back in, I just slept for a little while. And then I thought, I just want to finish, man. I don't care about medals. I don't care about anything. I just really, really want to finish. And I told the lady, I called the race director from there. And she says, well, Bill, if you go on, you're on your own. We're all going to the awards ceremony. It was 6 hours after the cutoff. I guess 6 hours after the cutoff. And I said, well, I'm going to go on. I'm good. And she says, well, you take a wrong turn out there, Bill. There's nobody going to be looking for you. I said, okay, thank you for the warning. And so there it's like a blizzard out there, man. It was a full on snowstorm. And, they had little white plates where the trail markers. And so I'd get up to I'd get up to the plate and I'd have to wipe it off with my glove. I go, okay, left turn. Anyway, I came in, like I said, like 6 hours after the cutoff, whatever was after the race was over. And I remember I had a little GoPro and I was trying to get a picture of where I thought I remembered where the finish line was, because everything was cleaned up. And I bet you do this too, man. When you do something long, one thing that keeps you going is what you're going to eat afterwards. All I could think about was there's this hamburger joint there with the best freaking hamburgers. And I was so hungry for regular food. It'd been, I think it was a 2-day cutoff, And so I walk up to this hamburger point, I still got my sled and everything. I leave it out in front, and I open the door and the lady goes, she looks at me, owns it. This still gets to me. She goes, you must be Bill. She goes, Rita told us you might be coming. And then there's like 6 people in the little diner and they started clapping for me that I'd finished the race. And that award ceremony is the best one I've ever had so far. Awesome. But anyway, yeah, that was crazy. And then I went down to, you hear about that. Then I go to Death Valley. I got to do Badwater, you know what I mean? And I went down there and I made it. Did I make it? I made it. Yeah, I made that my first time. It was 60-hour cutoff back then. So you could screw up and still make it, because I still didn't know, I didn't really have great game. But I remember, it was so hard to make it up that last hill, of Whitney to the portal, and it was huge. And I remember, when they put the award, the thing, that was a big deal to me, because I've heard about Badwater for a long time, and I got the little medal, and that was very, very emotional. That felt like a real win, you know what I mean? Because wasn't just a 50 miler. This was a hard 135 mile, one of the toughest in the world. So that was a big deal. Yeah. So kind of like, yeah, that's just what I did. And then I kept going further. I mean, now to date, I went back and I did a double Badwater. I'm one of 23 people to do that. And then I go, and then, I did 4. So I'm one of four people to do four back because I go, I'm really good at suffering for a long period of time. So I went back and forth in Death Valley for 3 weeks and finished that quadruple Badwater, 584 miles, 2 Mount Whitney summits, you know.
Amazing.
So yeah, I just started rolling. Keeps me sane as I can get.
Well, one thing I want to ask you about is just mindset during these events when you're actually partaking in them. And this question is coming from personal experience, Bill, because actually last year I ran my first ultra event. I did a 31-mile ultra marathon here in Central Texas, and it was 6 5-mile loops. And, pretty decent, well-maintained trail for the most part. But we did it in May of last year, and then we started at 8 o'clock at night because, around that time of year in Central Texas, it's really, really hot. So they wanted to start it and have it go into the night. And I'd say probably by like my fourth loop, and it's completely dark out, I'm navigating by headlamp. They also had some of like the shorter race events, like the 5K and the 10K. Like those runners had already finished, like doing their loops, and so it was just the ultra runners that remaining, and so we were spread out pretty good. So it was just wherever I could see my headlamp cutting through the darkness, and me just like walking along. And I tell you, Bill, like my mind went to some very, very strange places. Like I'm like recalling like very deep-seated memories that I haven't thought of in a very, very long time, like going all the way back to like since I was a kid. So there was just something about just that isolation, trying to push through like this endurance, this physical toll that I'm taking to keep moving forward. But my mind went into some very weird places. So I can only imagine what must have been going through your mind when you're out there for like 60 hours, like at a time through night and day. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I tell you where it's more gets to me because there you got the van. I had the van with me, so you could take a break as long as the van, just like in the race, same rules as the race. And you could take a break. And so you kind of got civilized people around you a little bit. But when I've been in Arrowhead and I'm always near the back, so that's 135 miles. My first couple times was like minus 35, and it's been minus 50 twice when I've been on the course. But you get out there and you start hallucinating. And I do want to give for the movie Epic Bill. So that's a documentary of mine on Amazon Prime right now. And it's really good. And it talks a lot about Arrowhead. There's a lot of Arrowhead footage and stuff in there. Really good movie. But anyway, but when you're 12 hours at night and not see another soul at like minus 35 degrees, and if you screw up, you're gonna end up dead or lose some parts. I mean, we definitely got survival gear on our sled, but I've had where it's so cold that when I go to unzip the sled, the zipper is frozen. And then I run down the trail, have to get my energy back, to build up heat because then you're shaking so bad. And then I'm like, come on, Bill, you got to get that zipper open or you're going to die right by your sled. So somehow I magically have enough strength always to rip that zipper open. I think there's tricks to that now too, like breathing on it, or I didn't know those tricks though back then, or just rubbing your hands on it or something, to build up some heat. But yeah, that isolation is huge. It really makes you tough. If it's really, really cold or really, really hot. I mean, Death Valley's just, I've tried to do now 3 times. I've tried to do, or I guess 2 or 3 times, the solo self-contained in Death Valley where you're pulling your cart. It's 150, 140 pound cart with all your survival gear. And, and I've tried that. And that's because we always talked about it. That's similar to Arrowhead. You're going and you can't have any assistance or anything like that. And it's so hot out there. And you got no break from the heat, like none, so it's just like Arrowhead. And so, yeah, Arrowhead is just at another level for me and I've taken 12 attempts at it, man. And I used to be pretty good at this stuff. I was making everything before I went to Arrowhead and I make 12 attempts at it and I've made it 99 miles. But that isolation when you're out there by yourself and nobody's around for hours and hours, and then you wonder if you could have took a wrong trail turn, that starts entering your mind. And then when you see like a marker, you're like, oh, thank God. But yeah, that isolation, I get so delirious. I've seen, people like, I would come up this is specifically at Arrowhead, and I come up on a tree and I go, oh my God, they hung somebody from that tree. It's not like a great hallucination where you're, and then I would get up there and I would go, oh, it's just the tree. You know what I mean? And then but I would do it over and over all the way through the night because you're so tired that you just, you're just kind of stumbling forward and you can't afford to screw up. You know what I mean? And then you're, and you're hallucinating so bad. But yeah, I mean, it is the night and people like, people, if we get together like two or three, you're like during the day, when the sun's out, it's like, it's warmer, because the sun's out and you could talk with somebody if you come upon somebody in the trail. And then, but at night, even when I'm with people, nobody talks to each other because it's a zombie walk, man. It's so cold on those cold days. You're just like boom, 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 boom. I mean, it's crazy stuff. That's all I can say, man. You really find what you're made of for sure.
Absolutely. And another thing from personal experience, a few years ago, back towards the end of 2021, I through hiked across the entire state of Michigan, which I mentioned to you beforehand is my home state. Now, I started it a little bit later in the year, actually. Like I stepped off from the Wisconsin-Michigan state line in Michigan's Upper Peninsula in late August, and I started the walk from there. Much of the reasoning behind that is because there were certain areas along the trail that required permitting, like Pictured Rocks National Lakeshore, for instance. And during the summer, all those campsites get filled up very, very fast, and it's a requirement. And if you want to camp within the park, you have to get a designated campsite. And so I was hoping that if I started when around like the time school started back up again, there'd be less people there. And fortunately, it worked out exactly as I was hoping for. But with that being said, though, once I got down to the lower peninsula, we're getting into late November, early December, and winter, it was very much upon us. It was snowing, it was cold. And I remember these mornings, Bill, where I'm waking up, I'm in my sleeping bag, and I'm hearing all this snow and wind hitting my tent outside. And the last thing I wanted to do was get out of that sleeping bag, have to put on all my clothes, try to break down this tent and to try to keep snow from getting inside the tent, and then having to roll it up while it's still wet, and then walk another 15 miles with my heavy pack on in the snow. Like, it was a gut check. I mean, the cold can really make or break you, like you said. But for me though, I was doing this as a charity. I was raising money for a nonprofit that helps veterans. So there was no way that I could just say, I don't want my fellow veterans to quit with whatever it is that they're going through. So I sure as hell am not going to quit out here. So, but still though, yeah, the cold is no joke. And then like there was even one morning where not even 30 minutes into my walk that day, the water freezes inside my hydration bladder hose. And so I had to like tuck that like inside my jacket and, like rub my chest to try to get it to thaw just so I can have water. I mean, yeah, so cold is rough. And it sounded like, what did it get down to? It got well into the negatives.
It's been minus 50. I've had twice where my, like people like it's a requirement to have a little stove, that you could, if you needed to boil water, to melt water. And, but it's like, I'm so close against the cutoff. I don't have time to do that. You know what I mean? I don't have a half hour, 20 minutes to do that because I'm up against the cutoff. So I've had my water freeze, like I think 2 or 3 times out there. And, I just quit doing camelbacks because I had an insulated hose over it. I try and blow all the water out, but you get so delirious at night because you're so cold. You don't blow all the water out. It freezes. You can't get it to unthaw, I mean, I've been like chugging water out there out of the camelback and have it coming down and go, oh, this can't be a good idea.
Absolutely not.
That's not going in the safety manual. But yeah, so I've had trouble with that freezing water also, I want to tell one story on Denali. We were stuck at 8,000 Camp 8. I think it's 10,000 feet for 8 days.
Wow.
It snowed. This is on Mount Denali. It snowed 8 feet in 8 days. Every day we have to get up and shovel. Man, you test mental toughness by how boring it is to sit in a tent all day and do nothing, And I mean, I think we did well. We got to shovel snow, but I remember and then our camp really we were one of the first people there. And so then people kept coming up the mountain because this is like the worst part of the mountain for snow. And so, it gets the most snow. So we were getting hammered. We were first there and we were getting hammered, and people came coming up and this, camp, the 8,000 feet or 10,000 feet was like packed with people. And my guy goes, we were so antsy too. He goes, there's going to be a little break in the weather. What do you guys think? I think we think we should go for it. And we all agree because we're freaking sick of being there. So you got to go up this motorcycle hill, which is steep. And we're going towards the next camp. And we got hit with a blizzard, man. It was like, it dropped to like minus 20, I don't know, 30 mile and 20, 30 mile. I don't know, real windy enough. And we had to break down our tent. I don't know if we had them up. I don't think we had them up. No, we didn't have them up. We just had to turn around and retreat back down to the next below. And I remember I was pushing it like down when we were trying to set up camp again. I had my liner gloves on and I'm pushing it so hard because I'm so, we're freezing, man. I mean, we've been going for a while now in this blizzard. And then I'm down there trying to, put my, and you can only wear your liner gloves so long. Anyway, the bottom line is I ended up with frostbite on my thumb, man. And I had to after I got off the mountain, I had to go to 3 doctors to make sure it was like all black. I had to go to 3 doctors till the third one told me I was going to keep it. But it was like, and I know like when you live there, it's odd. You know what I mean? It's like second nature to always know to put a glove on, and don't push it too far. But I'm in California. And so I'm just trying to get this stuff done. And I, you just push it a little bit too far. It doesn't take much and you're going to get frostbite, so, but yeah, it was the same story. We had to reset up our camp down below, and that blizzard was still going on. And I ended up with some pretty good frostbite, man. I learned a heck of a lesson there.
Well, I haven't done any mountaineering myself, but, I've had a couple of mountaineers come on this podcast before you, and it seems like there's a common denominator amongst those who I've met who've done mountains like Denali or Aconcagua, which I'd like to get here, talk about next here in a second. But it sounds like on top of a mountain, Mother Nature always has the final say. Like, no matter what, you can say, all right, I want to go to the summit of the mountain this morning. And that's whether or not if, Mother Nature will let you, really. So it's just that's one of the places in the world where when you want to see like what true wilderness actually looks like, go to the top of a mountain. I guarantee you'll see it there is what it sounds like.
You're not going to get help quick either, man. That's why, it's not a good idea to get frostbite up there. It was very, very painful, but you're on your own, you're on your own. There's nobody bringing a helicopter in there. Nothing, man. You got to be like dying for them to bring a helicopter in. And, a heck of a lesson. I mean, you feel it's a lot more than getting frostbite, like in civilization, because you're up there and there's no place to go. You know what I mean? They're, bandaging up my thumb and my fingers that were frostbitten, but there's no, there's no quick rescue. You got to hike off that freaking mountain, man. And I was like, it was really, really hurt, man. I mean, it was up there in the pain scale, and I've dealt with a lot of pain.
So at what point did mountaineering kind of become a thing for you? And you were just talking about Denali, but was Denali first? Was Aconcagua first? Tell us a little about your mountaineering journey.
I think my mountaineering journey came from doing Whitney in Death Valley, and doing doing a double and a quadruple where I went up to the top twice. Quadruple Badwater. I went to the top of Whitney twice, and I'm like, hey, I went to Whitney, and then I think I don't exactly know how I heard about Denali, but I read Into Thin Air when I was younger, and I always want to climb Everest. I still have it on my list. There's still a picture on my wall of Everest, so it's going to happen. But Denali was cheaper, and so I and somebody I met somebody who did it, and it's usually the thing, you meet him and you say, well, geez, this guy's a human just like I am. If he could do it, I could fricking do it, So that's how I went up there, and I called him. Now it's like, you got to take a 2-week course and all this craziness. I mean, like, not craziness, but it's long, you know what I mean? And then it was like, they didn't even have any. It was like, well, you've climbed Whitney and you want to do Denali? He goes, all right, well, at least get a weekend course in with a guide. And he named a guide down near LA. And I went to they got a Matterhorn that's not in Disneyland down there. And I did some training I did a couple days with that guy down there. And he was really tough on me, man. It was like boot camp or something, not that I've ever been in boot camp, but it was like, yeah, you really had to prove yourself to this guy for him to sign off on you. But yeah, and so I did a weekend course. I went up, and then then they took me. They were able to take me, up there. And I was running a lot, so I was in great running shape. But what happened on my first attempt at Denali was, I got up there and I got sick, man. I was just like almost like a flu type thing, and I wasn't feeling good. But I don't like to quit, right? So not a good idea on a mountain. Not a good idea. So it took a day or two till I finally told them I didn't feel good and we're going higher on the mountain. And then I woke up in the middle of the night, and it was like -5, I think, up there. And I'm literally like in, like a cold sweat or a hot sweat. I'm in a fever state, and I'm just delirious as hell. And my hands laying outside the sleeping bag. And I pulled it back in really quick and put it under my armpit. And so it wasn't that long. It was out there, but I went to the guide in the morning. I said, I think I got to go down. I'm really, really sick, man. And so it was like really brutal to get off that mountain. I fell a lot. I had my ice axe, you got to dig your ice axe into the thing. It was really brutal. It gave me a lot of, it was hard to get back on the mountain the next time, because I was having nightmares about how hard that was to get off when I was so sick, And so I've had frostbite. I've been sick. That mountain tortures me, but I still haven't made it, but I'm still going to do it again because I never quit. But yeah, that's how I got into it. I love, if things scare me and they're super hard, I want to conquer them. There's just no answers about it. I think I was a really scared kid. And so I don't want to have that. I don't want to be afraid of things like I was when I was a kid. And so if something scares me, I go, I'm doing it. You know what I mean? And usually when you do it, it's not as bad as what your mind makes it out to be. Otherwise nobody be doing it. As long as somebody's doing it, I go, it can't be that bad. You know what I mean?
Well, it's also those long-lasting memories that we make from doing stuff like this, and also the stories that we get to tell, because, it's just, it's going back to, our movie talk that we had earlier. Just like, look at every single movie that's pretty much ever been out there, is that every single movie has a character who in one way or another has to go through some sort of trial or tribulation and come out as a better person on the other side. Like, the hero's journey, the man in the arena, as we as we open up this conversation with, because if like someone just, went and did their job, just went home, sat around on the couch for the rest of the afternoon, would anyone want to watch a movie about that? Like, I don't think so, but it's just, but here you are, you're doing all these ultra endurance events. You're going out on these crazy, gnarly mountains. Denali is one of the seven, as is Aconcagua. And if no one knows what I'm referring to, the seven summits, highest mountains on every single continent. But these are the stories that you get, that you love telling, and that's usually what it is for me. It's like I always like telling the stories where something went awry. I had some kind of misadventure. I seldomly do I ever tell the stories where everything was sunshine and rainbows, right? And even as tough as it was in the moment, sometimes we can't help but look back on those very fondly, and sometimes even laugh. Like even when I was going through boot camp, man, my drill instructors just roughed me up for three whole months straight. But then sometimes I love just telling the stories about like some of the stuff that they did and some of the things that they called me. And of course, I tell some of my civilian friends, and they're just like, "Oh my gosh, that's so mean." I'm like, "That was funny though."
Yeah, I like to say, life is about stories, man. I mean, when you're done with this life, you want to have some stories. You don't want to say, "Oh my God, did you see this 13-part TV series? That was so good." No, you got to get out there in the arena. By the way, so I was so depressed after one race that I didn't finish. I don't even remember. But a guy told me about the man in the arena. I never knew about it before. He says, "Bill, you need to go home and read The Man in the Arena." And I read that poem. And I will tell you, to this day, every time I don't make anything, I read that poem because I'm very proud now that I get in the arena. And I not only get in the arena once, I'll do it over and over and over. No matter how bad I get tortured, I still will keep getting in the arena and going back. And I'll just add a little bit extra. I was kind of embarrassed about all my attempts at Arrowhead because I really was running well back then. And that was all I was doing. I hadn't started swimming for the English Channel and all this stuff that, kind of, diversified my training. Then I was just running. And so I remember Quinn, who's the director of Epic Bill the movie, she was asking me, like how many attempts I had. And I go, "I don't know. I always just say 2 or 3 because I'm like, I was embarrassed. I really didn't even keep track. And then she looked at me when she looked it up. She went to the race, list, that the race had. And it was my 8th attempt when that movie was filmed. I go, "You got to be kidding me." And then here's the thing, right? So I was embarrassed, that I couldn't finish it. And then when the movie came out, it was almost like a badge of honor that this guy just won't quit. You know what I mean? He keeps coming back. He won't quit. And so that's what I'm telling you, man. If you got this big issue on failure, it's not a big, you got to keep coming back and keep attacking it, learn from it, keep coming back. But everybody who makes anything in their life in this world has gone through a lot of failure, usually a lot, because that's how you learn your lessons,
Mm-hmm. And you just got to have that relentless spirit too. Another movie reference. We got to throw them in there from time to time too. And
I'm a video king.
Yes, I'm stealing this one from David Goggins, unfortunately, but it's very fitting for what it is we're talking about, though, Bill. And it's towards the end of Rocky, when like the first Rocky, when he's fighting Apollo Creed at the very end, and Apollo is just like messing him up, and it gets into the later rounds. And then, Apollo lands a clean hit. Rocky drops down, and Apollo thinks like that's the end of the fight. Like that's a knockout. There's no way he's getting back up, and he's already in his corner, like winding down, kind of celebrating and everything like that. And then he like looks over his shoulder, and he sees Rocky's already back on his feet, and he's got his gloves up, and he's ready to keep going. And then David Goggins describes it as, he just took Apollo Creed's soul in that moment, because Apollo thought that he had won, but he, completely underestimated Rocky's determination that, even though he got hit so hard, he's still going to get up and he's going to keep fighting. So, I mean, like what a great lesson to translate into life, though. And, you've done it, I've done it. And I really hope that our listeners are hearing us talk today and they think to do it too, with whatever it is that they're facing or want to pursue.
Yeah, you know what? I'll look up people who are famous sometimes, their history, and I'll guarantee you, for this guy to get to this level, he went through something in his life. And always like they overcame some sort of a physical thing or, really bad upbringing. I mean, there's always something in it that makes you tough. And I'm telling you, if you got coddled all the way through your childhood, you better go find some adversity on your own, man. Whatever scares the hell out of you, you got to go do it. I mean, that's what when I went to a Tony Robbins, he had us write down all our fears. This was a long time ago, and I wrote them down like a binder full. I went after every one of them, man. Just recently, I did the last ones, like probably in the last 4 years, which was skydiving and bungee jumping because I was scared. I did skydiving because I got so nervous up on Denali when I get on the high peaks, and you got the straight drop and I'm gripping, and you can't be doing that on a mountain. You're just wasting all kinds of energy. And so I skydive. I just did the tandem one, but and of course, if I could do this height, then I got to be able to do this height and I got to be able to do this height. Pretty soon I'm up at like, I don't know, is it 20,000 feet where you got oxygen in your nose and you're jumping out of the plane? Because I'm excessive, but it helped when I got on the mountain. But you can't have those fears. If you've been coddled, if you've been coddled, you probably got a really long list. My dad was ex-Marine, so my dad was tough. So my list was like this. It was still long, but not as long as some people, I'm sure, But that's what makes you tough, is you got to go after those fears. And I don't know. I tell people that who, some people that I think could use it, to get toughened up a little bit, and they just ignore me. There's no way they want to go after their fears. And you know what? Well, you might as well figure you've made it as far as you're going to make it in this life, because you're going to be stuck. Those fears are going to stop you from getting to your big goal.
Well, and of course, as you've mentioned, sometimes you just got to get that one win, and that one win could be overcoming just one fear, even a small one. I mean, in this day and age, you're absolutely right. It seems like there's a lot of like common fears that I would say maybe like hundreds and thousands of years ago. I'm an archaeologist by day, so of course I
love all your stuff.
Yeah, so of course I like to look on our human past to draw lessons from. But what were people afraid about hundreds and thousands of years ago? It was potentially people coming into their homes or their camps and trying to take all their stuff. It's wild creatures that they have to keep at bay all through the night by keeping a fire lit. It's harsh conditions, and whether or not they can endure illnesses and the whole gamut. But nowadays, it seems like a lot of things that people, when they talk about that they're afraid of something, they may be afraid of things like rejection, like asking a boss for a promotion, like asking like a woman out on a date, or asking for a raise, or whatever the case may be. So I'd say start small there. Like if you have a hard time, let's say, going along with this example of dating, if you have a hard time talking to girls, try talking to girls more, or something, or just go ask that boss for that raise that you think you deserve. You've been working hard. You've been doing a lot of good work. You have the potential to take on more responsibilities. Don't be afraid to go ask. And really, what's the worst that can happen from that too, right? So, yeah, but I think again, it's like that could just give you that small win that you need to, like you said, just go down the list of all those fears, start plugging them away. But you got to do at least one first.
I started at the easiest, and then I worked my way down to the tough. That's why those ones jumping out of a plane and bungee jumping were the last two for me to do, because they were the scariest for me, But I'll tell you, one fear I had was speaking in public. I mean, doing speaking in public at all, any kind of a group at all. And I'm talking like maybe 12 people would intimidate the crap out of me. You know what I mean? Not even a big group. And I remember I went to a Tony Robbins seminar, and he had us walking on coal, and that was supposed to be like your face and your fears. And I remember at the very end, there's 700 people in this auditorium, and this fear of speaking in public was so huge. I said, come on, Bill, just raise your hand. This is a super supportive audience, and just ask one question, to Tony of some sort, right? Just so I could say I spoke in front of 700 people. And my arm was here, and it got stuck. It was like a lead. I couldn't lift it for nothing. And I'd gone through this whole weekend, and I was all pumped up. I was so ashamed that I couldn't get, so depressed, whatever you want to call it, that I couldn't ask one question. You know what I did the next week? I signed up for a Dale Carnegie course, because when you start out, you have like 30 people and they start you out, it's small and you work your way up. And so I went after that fear, smaller chunk, and did really good. And now I've spoken in front of a high school of like 1,400 people. So whatever your fear is, you just, like you said, start out small, work your way up, man.
Absolutely. All right, so we've been discussing this documentary that you have out. Epic Bill is the title, and it can be found on Amazon, and Apple TV. I believe it's out there as well. So, yeah, give us a little bit of a synopsis on it, and what can our listeners and viewers expect? I mean, I'll have it linked up in the show notes and everything. So, but tell us a little bit about it.
I think it's extremely inspiring. You know what I mean? Just because all the stuff I was so embarrassed about, it turns out it's very motivating that I will keep coming back to these events. And my sister came to me after, I was doing these events for a while, and she said, my son's getting ready to graduate from film school. What do you think about him and his friends doing a documentary on you? And I go, well, that sounds great, obviously, And then I told her that my next race was Arrowhead. And she looked at the weather and she says, oh, it's going to be like -40 or something out there. She says, Bill, you got to get somebody to drive those kids around, up there in northern Minnesota, who knows what they're doing, because these kids are from LA.
Quite the contrast.
Yeah. So I brought a guy in who, like, he was a buddy of mine, but he used to like clear airfields, like be there where you stayed in a tent all winter. You'd have to get out there with some equipment and clear the airfield all winter. And so he's a badass, and he loved having these LA kids under his his tutelage, So every time I would come to some sort of a checkpoint or something, these kids were all dressed in black too. It looked like a bunch of ninjas were coming out. They all had the same outfit on, and they did a great job, man. We got in, we've won like 2 film festivals with it. It's like, I think it's 57 minutes now. They cut it down to get it on, to get onto TV and everything. And it's 57 minutes, and it was like an hour and a half. And I go, what'd they cut? They cut all the boring stuff about my life. So now it's just all action. But yeah, it's done really, really well. And they did an incredible job. I will tell you, I'm one of those guys. I looked at these kids. They came out. I was pulling my sled on the beach. That's how I train out here for Arrowhead. And I'm pulling and they're filming me. And I look at these 3 kids who are around 23 years old. I go, I just want to tell you guys, we're going to win an Academy Award. We are going to, I hold them. People can be held much higher than what they even think, And these guys, we didn't win an Academy Award, but we did win 2 film festivals, and we're still going. We're out on Amazon Prime, which is a big deal. And it's just that, yeah, I was holding them to a very high standard that we're winning an Academy Award, because I hold myself to that standard. I'm always going for the biggest, the hardest, the this. I don't always make it, but I'm always going for it. That's how you make big things in life, is you have to shoot for big things in life, But it's a great movie. That's all I want to say.
Yeah, well, I certainly enjoyed it, and I certainly did see the quality in like the camera work and the editing too. Everything from the graphics that they included, because there's a lot of inclusion of the trail maps of the different races that you've done. Those are really well put together, and then but also it's just that was one of the things I was sort of thinking about as well. Is just. Like how, I was asking myself, like, how do they get those shots? Because you're way out there in the middle of nowhere. So unless if they're like running the whole thing with you, how the heck did they get out there with their cameras to get you kind of get that raw footage like that?
Well,
so
in Arrowhead,
hats off to them.
Yeah, this guy knew where the roads were. That then you got a little trail to walk in. You know what I mean? He knew where the roads that intercepted the trail on Arrowhead. On Aconcagua, I know you asked me a little bit about that, but I had a GoPro, and when I got my first attempt, I made it to 22. It's 22,800 feet. I made it to 22,200 feet. We took a break, and then I couldn't stand back up, man. I was just like, 600 feet to go, but I never experienced altitude like that. I just couldn't breathe. I couldn't stand up. I laid on my back. He gave me a countdown, and then I had my GoPro, and they call it the money shot. So it's a money shot when my heart's broken and I got to go down, and I filmed it, and that's in the movie too. It was like, I don't even know how I'm going to go down because I really pushed it to the bitter end, but somehow I stumbled my butt down that mountain, and that's why you see me here. But never quit. Woo, woo. I'm going back to that one again too.
Outstanding. So, now I want to ask you about the wall behind you as well. So, you got some very motivating imagery and some words right behind you. So, kind of tell us a little bit about that, and just how it continues to feel you. These affirmations that you have.
What I don't own a TV. I mean, I got my little phone that I'll watch some motivational YouTube videos. I really believe that if you keep putting good stuff into your mind, good stuff comes out.
Absolutely.
So this wall is my vision wall, my motivational wall. It's got goals on it. It's got people who inspire me. You talked about Goggins. I have like 3 pictures of Goggins here. I met him in Badwater. He caught up to me the year he had heart problems. I was in a slower heat, so I started before him. He caught up to me. We walked for a while. He was a cool guy. He made me do 20 push-ups just once. Give me 20. I don't care how hot that pavement is. I'm just kidding about that. But he's on my wall. It's people that are, like if they inspire me and, then they're going to go on the wall. And then if down the road I find something out about somebody that I don't find inspiring, I take them off the wall. So you're only on if you're legit, man. You got to be a legit badass who inspires me, So this wall, just so you know, goes all the way down.
Oh, okay. Wow.
Yeah.
Heck yeah.
I had to buy a rolling chair so I could look at it when I'm in the morning and I'm listening to motivational music or watching a little clip, and then I just look at the wall. And you wonder, so like people pay tens of thousands of dollars, or at least thousands of dollars for billboards, right? And you just pass those, like how fast you go down the freeway and you pass it. But that's getting in your subconscious mind, and they know that, those advertisers know that. So I don't want anybody else putting stuff in my head. I put what I want in my head. So I figure by looking at this every freaking day, morning and night, my couch just faces right at the wall. There's no TV.
Well, I really like that idea. Again, having grown up in the era of analog, because, obviously technology, social media, everything like that is great. That's how you and I got connected and we were able to make this happen. But also at the same time, though, it could be a very deep, dark rabbit hole that it can get like people in a downward spiral of negativity. With just like, so sometimes I think like if you have motivational stuff in your domain at home off of the screens, then, I think then that's good information. That's good input, like right away, like starting your day with that great input. And you're absolutely right. It just sets a good tone. Like if your morning starts out well, what's the rest of the day going to be like? It's just, so I always make sure I'm deliberate and intentional with that as well, where it's like, I'll make sure I'll do like other stuff first. Like, I'll get up, I'll pray, I'll move my body in some like sort of way. I don't always succeed in this, I'll certainly admit, but I really try not to make like checking my phone or scrolling social media the first thing I do when I wake up, because when I give my attention to like other people or I'm taking in all this negativity, like I said, it's just the rest of my day, it's hard to get it back on track after that. You know what I mean? But if I'm like deliberate and intentional with positivity first thing, positive affirmations, then it just sets that framework for a good day, I'd say.
There's a lot of positivity on YouTube too. You just have to be very careful, but there's a lot of good stuff on there, clips, things that get you fired up to want to go do stuff. But I start my day out. The thing I've been trying to do lately is what is great? What was great? Like I'm in the morning and I get up, I said, what was great that went on yesterday? And that, so you're what I like this lady, talked about it, but you're training your brain to look for what's great in life, and you're not to look for what horrible problem there was. So I used to like look up and, oh my God, I got this problem to deal with this and this. Now I'm training my brain to think positive right away, because I would think this negative stuff. And then I do my wall and do some motivational and get myself out of it. But now I'm like even earlier than that. So I'm thinking back, what are my positives? And then I'll write out a list of my gratitude. So just a binder paper of gratitude of what I'm grateful for. And so, yeah, you're right. You got to get I hear people like, I just go out and work out and I just do this. Well, I did that too. And that helps. But I think for me, it's better to be doing this stuff first and then go work out, I mean, because sometimes you got some crap in your brain and just stays there even through a workout,
Sure.
But, I don't know. So I like doing this. It just seems like really gets the day going. That whole morning thing, I just really agrees with me. I think it agrees with you too. And I love that you have your bucket list in your wallet too, man. You pull that out because you want to keep reminding yourself of what you're shooting for. You know what I mean? If you don't keep reminding yourself, you can forget easy and go down that comfort zone. Well, what could I do that's comfortable? Like an ice cream?
Right. Absolutely. So, if I may, I have a suggestion of a phrase you can put on a card for your wall if you're willing. One of my favorite quotes that I just simply like to tell myself, and that is just 2 words: choose strength. Because as we go through life each day, the choices that we make could either weaken us, weaken our minds, weaken our bodies. Like you said, sometimes that there's that temptation to just want to go for easy things. But I just know that that's not choosing strength. That's not going to lead me on a path of strength like I want. It's getting into the arena, getting those workouts in, facing fears and everything like that. So I often find myself when I'm at like those crossroads where I have to make a decision, is just like, okay, well, I got to choose strength. Like, what's the strong choice here? And that's how that's kind of sort of one of my guiding principles as I go about through progressing in my own life is just, and that goes through anything. It goes through physical training, mental training, how I show up in my relationships and everything like that is just choose strength. And
I love it, man.
And that's a good one for me.
Yeah, no, that's a great one for anybody, man. Yeah, if you choose the comfort zone and the easy road, that just leads to depression and stuff, it leads to depression. I think we have too much easy going on. We need more hard going on.
Absolutely.
And I think people will feel a lot better about themselves as they start doing some hard stuff,
Absolutely agree. All right. So as we start winding down here, I also kind of want to know what do you got on the horizon? We're looking at maybe a late November, early December release for this episode. So what do you have towards the end of this year, or what do you have on the docket going into 2026?
Yeah, I'm a little quiet right now because I'm going back for my 6th attempt at the English Channel. So I never swam as a kid. I didn't really. Just like park and rec swimming, where you go for 2 weeks out of the summer and you can swim out in a lake over your head. Then I would tread and then swim immediately back in. And, but I learned to swim to the triathlons. I did, so I could do an Ironman. And then I remember I did the Ultraman in Hawaii. And there was a girl out there after I finished that, which was a big deal. It was a 10K swim, but with a wetsuit in a very calm bay. And which was a big deal to me. But one of the girls who finished 5 minutes ahead of me in the swim had done the English Channel. And it's, I always say it, I go, if she could do the English Channel, I could do it. That's like 12 or 13 years ago. And I'm still going back. But in the beginning, I swam out and I remember I signed up for a club in the bay, to swim in the bay. And the lady who took my call, at the time, it was the Dolphin Club. Now I'm a member of the South End. But she said, you're going to swim the English Channel? What have you done? I said, well, I've swam 6 miles in Hawaii. And she says, well, what if you jump in the bay? Because we don't wear wetsuits in the English Channel or, when I swim in the bay for training. And you don't like it. What if you don't like that cold water and all that? I said, Well, I hope not. I already gave my deposit. But within 3 months, I swam 6 hours and qualified for my channel swim, And anyway, yeah. And that first swim, it's a good story, but I'll make it quick. But the pilot meets me, the boat pilot meets me, when I get into town. And I give him my check and all this stuff, it's like a $3,000 check or something. And he goes, Bill, I've been looking at your website, man. So you're an extreme endurance athlete and you think you can swim the English Channel? No way in hell will you ever be able to swim the channel. No way in hell. And I thought to myself, I go, wow, this is very peculiar service for somebody I just handed a $3,000 check to. Anyway, he calls me like 2 days later. He says, hey man, it's going to be good conditions. We're going to go tonight. You know what I mean? And so meet me down at the boat dock at like 3 a.m. in the morning. Right. And so it's like, I go down and meet him and you got a half-hour boat ride to where you start the swim, and you go over to the side, the English side, you swim to shore. It's like a 1/4 mile swim. But he goes, and we start going down and it's pitch black and there's white caps everywhere, right? And here I've been swimming in San Francisco Bay, which is rougher than the bay I swam in Hawaii, but it's still not like this kind of conditions. I mean, the English Channel has sunk like the Roman Empire's Navy or something one year.
Right.
Anyway, I know. So I'm going like, dude, you said it was going to be nice. This is rough. He goes, well, Bill, surprise storm blew in, and he starts laughing. Right. So
have fun.
We get to where we got to start, and I swim to shore. Right. 1/4 mile. I go to stand up to get out of the water, and a wave hits me on the back, puts me on my knees. I crawl out of the water. I stare out at this angry ocean and I'm like, oh my God, what have I gotten myself into? It's pitch black. There's white caps, everywhere. And I remember what the guy had told me when after he told me that I bet you won't make it. He goes, my worst guy lasted 20 minutes, Bill. You probably won't even last 20 minutes. That's what he told me. And I jumped in that water and started swimming. To this day, it's the roughest water I've ever been in. I couldn't even tell which way it was out. I was getting slammed like this every which way. And you know what I was thinking the whole time? Please, Bill, last 20 minutes. You don't want to be a laughing stock. I made it 4 hours and I puked my guts out and I wouldn't quit. I just kept puking. I wouldn't quit. I kept puking. I wouldn't quit. And then finally I was like, I was like literally like horizontal in the water. And just like doggy paddling because I had no energy and it was either quit or drowned. And I said, I think I'm done. When I got on the boat, the guy looked at me, goes, I knew you wouldn't make it, but that was a hell of an effort. So that was a little kudo there. But now I've taken 5 attempts. And the last one I swam 20 miles. They put up a sign that said 4 miles to go. And I thought I had it. I said, I got this. I got it. And then some sort of a big cloud came overhead and this storm blew in and started hammering us, man. And I'm like, I'm not quitting. I'm not quitting. And I got my head down and I'm just swimming. And, and I remember then I looked at the sign after doing this for like an hour and they had put up a sign that said 4 miles to go. This is on the boat. And now it said 7 miles to go. I go, you got to be kidding me. I went backwards. That's not possible. Anyway, what happened was I really went sideways and the wind was pushing me here. The current was pushing me like this. And I missed the Calais point in France. So you have to swim further into shore. But at the time I didn't know any of this stuff. So I'm thinking like, man, note to self, tell the crew, never put a sign up that's bigger than the last one. I don't care. And then anyway, I kept swimming until then I looked up because I wasn't going to quit and I couldn't find the boat, man. I just put my head down and I was digging and I looked around. It was probably maybe 30 or 45 seconds, not super long. Couldn't find the boat. Thought I was in the, where the ship goes down and, the fishing boat goes down in that movie, and, and the guy's out there treading and then that's the last scene of the movie. And then I finally saw the boat towards England. And I swam to it. It was like a 1/4 mile away. And the guy says, we're done, Bill. I've been swimming almost 12 hours now. And he says, yeah, I can't stay with you in this storm, so I'm calling the swim. And I was exhausted anyway. He gets me on the boat and he hands me a bucket, right? I go, no, I got this seasick patch because I'd been seasick out there too. That cost me a couple swims, but now I wore a patch. I go, I'm good. He goes, no, you just hold on to that bucket. And sure enough, because I was so depleted, so everything, I start throwing up in this bucket. And here's the part I didn't tell you was when I started the swim, there was a guy next to me in the boat. He was from Australia, his boat, and we both swam to shore at the same time to start. And he said, I'll see you in the drink, mate. And so this guy, when we start, he goes off like a lightning bolt. I go, this guy was elite. I'm just a guy just trying to make it. And so here I'm going back. I'm puking my guts out after swimming for almost 11 hours in this bucket. And I hear over the radio that the guy from Australia made it. I go, how did he make it? They said, because he was so fast, he was protected by the cliffs of France. So because he was fast, he made it to France. I was slow. I got the consolation prize of the bucket on a 2-hour ride back to England. But I never quit. I'm going back. 2027.
All right. Outstanding. All right. So, one of the things I also like to ask my guests to do towards the end of the show is to issue a challenge to our listeners and viewers because, you and I, we shared some great stories today, and you gave us some great insights today as well. But as I always say, is that inspiration, stories, ideas, insights can really only take our listeners and our viewers so far. If they want to go out and do amazing things, they have to follow up what they hear today with action to go out and do amazing things in their life. So with that, what challenge would you issue to our listeners and viewers today for them to go out there and start living a more adventurous life?
I think I would try to write out that list of your fears, and that very bottom one, the one that's the least scariest, I would attempt to do that. Be the man in the arena on that least scariest thing. The odds are it's probably just in your head. You know what I mean? It's probably not free soloing El Cap like Alex Honnold. It's probably something like me. Like, was I going to die talking at a Tony Robbins seminar? No, there was nothing going to happen. It was all in my head. And that's what 99% of our fears, or most of them, are like just crap that we got stuck up there. So I would try and take that very bottom fear that's the least scariest to you and try to make an attempt at that, or at least schedule something to make attempt at that. Get something moving in that direction.
All right. Absolutely. Okay. So what I have for you next is my final 3. These are 3 fun questions. At least I like to think that they're fun questions that I ask all my guests towards the end of the show. So of course you're going to get asked these as well. And the first of these 3 questions is, what is your favorite place that you've been to so far?
Oh, yeah. I really we do training for Death Valley in Laughlin, Nevada. I I have really good memories of Lake Tahoe though, from growing up, but doing these endurance sports, Laughlin, Nevada, for some reason, I really enjoy it because we go and, it's like 140 degrees in the sun, and me and my buddy, we go down there and train, and we're pulling our tire down the street when it's 140 degrees, training for this thing. It's just, and it's not a race. We're just training. I've always had fun down there, and that's in, it's almost as hot as Death Valley. It's very, very close, but you go back to your hotel room, we're staying at like Harrah's or whatever. And, you eat regular food, and you had this great training day. And I don't know, I just got good memories of that because it's kind of civilized, but really hard too, So, but as far as my kid memories is really of Lake Tahoe, and I've done some stuff up there too.
That is a beautiful area. I've only been to Lake Tahoe once, but it is quite spectacular. All right. So next question. What is one thing on your bucket list that you have yet to do?
I would say climb Everest, man. It's still on there. I was going to do Denali first. I think if I can come up with the money, I'm going right to Everest. I mean, I think I got the qualifications to go to Everest. I made it to high camp on Denali, and I just got to get it in. I read that book Into Thin Air a long time ago. And when people start dying, I go, I got to do that. I got to climb that mountain. People are dying. Makes it, I know it's a worthy challenge then for sure, So yeah, I would do Everest.
Well, I really like how you're doing like the most epic mountain, and that's what you got on your mindset. Because, well, actually, that's the same thing for me. I actually did an episode a while back called Epic First. Sometimes where, there's the idea of building up to it. Like they'll say, well, before you can do Everest, you got to do all the other seven, right? Or whatever. I'm like, well, if I want to do Everest, why don't I just go do Everest, right? So for me, my big bucket list item for me is going to Antarctica, and I'm actually sailing there next month.
Wow.
So yeah, so because like that was my mindset. Like it's on my bucket list to go to all seven continents. And so far I've done like four, and Antarctica is going to be number 6 for me because I'm going to be going to South America, Antarctica in a single trip. But, for a while I was thinking, well, maybe I should do Antarctica last because it's, the most epic. It's the frozen continent. It's the hardest to get to. It's the most wild. Why don't I save it for the last and work up to it? I'm like, well, if it's really as epic as I think it is, why don't I just do it next? Right. So that's what I'm doing. So I'm going to Antarctica next month.
I love it, man. No, my camera guy went there for, I don't know, last year or the year before for, I don't know, like a couple weeks, man. He loved it. It's just white. It's just white, 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 man. Yeah, he loved it, man. That's a big deal. There's a summit down there. It's not very big, I don't think. It's the most expensive one to climb because it's so expensive to fly down there, I guess, right?
Yeah, well, just in terms of scale, because I think when some people think of Antarctica, we forget that we're talking about a continent and that it's vast. Like so, Vincent Massif is the seventh summit down there. And now, for context, so I'm going to be in the Antarctic Peninsula. Like I said, I'm sailing through the Drake Passage to get there. That is
great.
And Vincent Massif, as the crow flies, is still about like over 1,000 miles away from the Antarctic Peninsula. So, like I said, we're talking about a vast, huge, massive piece of land. So, yeah, it's like that definitely is the spot where, yeah, Mother Nature, like we talked about earlier, definitely has the final say. And I think that's definitely adds to how expensive it is. Not only is it expensive to get to Antarctica, but of course, everything else that you need to do to get, supplies there, camp there, or God forbid, you need to be evacuated from that mountain too. So it's very expensive.
Yeah, that's what I hear. I think he went down there on a gig, he got hired to go down there. So that helps. But I respect that, man. I respect your sailing and all that. That's a big deal. Your MMA, I wanted to touch on that a little bit because Hoist Gracie, my life coach, her wife is his niece.
Really?
And so I've had conversations with Hoist Gracie. He actually backed one of our shorts on doing Arrowhead, one of them that I made a short on it, 25-minute movie. And he, he endorsed it and was like an executive producer on it. But he's like amazing. That first UFC one where he's, wrestling the 300-pound, or whatever a sumo wrestler weighs, and just fighting all these guys and getting them to tap the Shamrock. That one Shamrock looked like a beast. Got him to tap. I asked him, I said, what those guys think when you beat them? He goes, they couldn't figure it out. They didn't know how I got to them, And, but yeah, so you're an MMA guy and fought in the cage. Major respect for you. Major. Woo.
Yeah, that's definitely about as arena as it gets, I would say. Because yeah, you're literally like throwing down with someone who wants to hurt you back. So
I know you can't go in there like a softie, and they definitely want to hurt you bad too if they can. At least I guess the ones who are good.
Yeah, absolutely. But I came out on top that night, so I was.
You're the king, man. You're 1-0. You're undefeated. They're going to come back to get you again in there. But anyway, yeah, I wanted to share that because I thought that was great.
Thank you. And so I have one last question, this final 3 for you, Bill. And this is a 2-parter question. What is your favorite animal, and have you seen this animal in the wild?
My favorite animal is probably my dog, and he's a white Pekingese. He's right down there. And I have not seen him in the wild other than me taking him up on Mount Tam out here and keeping an eye out so the coyotes don't eat them. My worst nightmare. But yeah, I mean, yeah. And I've seen, like wolves out in nature. I guess I've seen them. I heard them really close by up there in International Falls. And, people got all kinds of stories where they're around them. But yeah, really just, and probably the moose. I remember when I was telling you about the guy hanging. Well, another one was the first one I ever did up there. The first time I tried, this was in Denali. This was the Susitna. The guy said, I go, what's the coldest you've ever been in? It was like -70.
Wow.
And then I said, well, one thing I asked him, I go, how do you go to the bathroom in -70? He goes, and then he wouldn't answer me. And then I go, no, I'm serious. He goes, fast, Bill, fast. But he says, you got to watch out. Right before I did the race, he says, you got to watch out for the moose. He goes, the moose, they're really mean this year. There's been a lot of snow. They're really mean. And if you see a moose on the trail, you need to go. I don't care if to go 100 yards around it up to your neck in snow. You got to do it. So, of course, the whole night I hallucinated that I saw moose on the trail. And I kept getting ready to go around them, and then I would get up, and again, that cold screws with me with the hallucinations. There was always just some little bush or something, but yeah, I actually thought I saw moose. And they all have horrible stories up there about moose and grizzly bears. Oh my God, they're horrible. That stuff all gets in your head,
Yeah, well, we'll steer clear from those big guys for sure. We'll admire them from a distance. How about that?
Yeah, what that guy's story he told me, he goes, yeah, my father-in-law had one on his property, and this is like a week ago or 2 weeks, and he goes right before, and he goes, he had the moose. He started carrying a gun, in his waistband, because he was worried about this moose being on his property. And then he didn't see him. He was looking around. He didn't see him. And the moose hit him from behind and then drove him into the ground and started stomping on him. But it had just snowed. And so it was powder. And so he pushed him down, and he rolled over with his gun and shot the moose in the belly to kill it, And that's the story he tells me right before I do Susitna, is this moose trying to kill his father-in-law story. I was like, not good for the hallucinations, dude.
Yeah, we'll try to not think about that as we're suffering in the cold,
in the middle of the night. Yeah, so I really haven't seen too many real wild ones, only like in my hallucinations. Thank God.
Yeah, thank goodness for sure. So, all right. Well, Bill, that's it. That's all the questions that I have for you tonight. But before we call it a day here, let's talk about where our listeners and viewers, where they can go connect with you, where they could go watch the documentary Epic Bill. So, yeah, how can we find you out in the internet space?
Yeah, I'm on. I do a lot on YouTube right now, but I'm also on Instagram, which is probably a little more user friendly for most people, under Epic Bill Bradley. And then the film is called Epic Bill. Definitely worth a watch, really, really good. And that's on Amazon pay-per-view. So you find, you play it or whatever. And then it's also on Apple TV. Yeah. And it's international right now. We're getting to be fancy. Woo, woo.
Heck yeah. So, all right, and like I mentioned, it'll all be linked in the show notes for this episode, or if we have viewers who are watching us talk on YouTube, they can find it down in the description below. It'll all be there. They can just go click away and find everything. All right. Well, Bill, I want to thank you very much for taking the time for joining me tonight. And, I know we're both busy guys. We have a lot going on. There's a lot that we're seeking to do in our lives, but I always appreciate these conversations. I think it's just hearing these stories from other people, and and also just their insights, like what's working, what hasn't worked, like how do they come back from failures. I think these are great conversations to have and great stories to tell. So I want to thank you for sharing your story and insights with myself and the listeners today. This has been great, sir.
Thank you very much, Josh. You're the king, the king. Woo, woo. All around adventure podcast power. Woo, woo.
Let's do it.
Really, really enjoyed it. It was excellent. Thank you.
All right. Right on, sir.